I was savoring my morning coffee, letting the stillness of my land wash over me, when something happened that nearly made me choke on the brew. A convoy of SUVs, campers, and sedans stretched down my private dirt road, their tires kicking up a cloud of dust as they rolled in. At first, I thought I was imagining it, maybe still half asleep, but no, the chaos was real. People began piling out of their cars, stretching and yawning, as if they had just arrived at a five-star resort. Some started setting up tents, others dragged coolers, and a few were already picking out the perfect spots to camp. I stood there, my mug still in hand, absolutely stunned. What in the world was going on? And then I saw her, Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, clipboard in hand, her blonde bob swaying as she strode toward me like a general leading her troops. That smug look, the one that practically screamed, "I'm in charge here," made my blood boil. I took a deep breath, setting my coffee down before I ended up tossing it across the yard. I stepped off the porch and headed toward the growing crowd. People hammering stakes into the ground, setting up folding chairs, even unfurling sleeping bags as though they were in a national park. "Morning, neighbor," Karen called out, flashing me a grin as if we were best friends. "We really appreciate your generous donation to the HOA's annual camping retreat." I blinked. "My what?" Karen chuckled, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. I told the HOA we needed a community getaway, and your land is perfect. Plenty of space, away from the city, and it's not like you're doing anything important with it." My jaw clenched. "Karen, this is my land. Private property. These people have no business being here." She flashed me one of those patronizing smiles that sent my blood pressure soaring. "Well, technically, the HOA decided we should have a shared outdoor experience. And since you're part of the neighborhood—" "I'm not part of the HOA." I cut her off, my voice sharp enough to slice through steel. Her smile faltered for half a second before she plastered it back on. "Well, you should be. The rest of us already made arrangements. It's just for the weekend, and honestly, you should be grateful to be included." Grateful? Was she serious? My eyes scanned the scene. Someone had already started a fire pit. Kids were running wild, and a guy in cargo shorts was trying to string a hammock between two of my trees. "This is trespassing," I said, barely keeping my composure. "You need to get everyone off my property right now." Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, don't be so dramatic. We're all neighbors here. It's just camping." "Camping?" I asked, incredulous, gesturing to the scene of chaos. Over 100 uninvited guests spreading across my land. Before I could even finish my thought, a loud splat echoed through the air, followed by a shriek. A teenage girl had stepped into a pile of cow manure. "Gross. There's poop everywhere," she screamed, hopping on one foot. Her mother gasped in horror. "Wait, you mean this isn't a cleaned-up campsite?" she asked, clearly horrified. Karen hesitated, her voice dropping a notch. "Well, technically no, but—" "You mean there are no bathrooms?" Someone else shouted from the crowd, appalled. A man in a Hawaiian shirt sniffed the air, his face scrunching in confusion. "What's that smell?" I struggled to hold back a laugh. This wasn't some polished campground. It was raw, untamed land, the kind of place where nature and all its glorious hazards thrived. Karen, however, was digging herself into a deeper hole. With hands on her hips, she shot me a glare. "Look, we've already planned this. People took time off work. Some even brought RVs. It's too late to cancel now." I crossed my arms, unfazed. Not my problem. Karen's glare could have burned a hole in the ground. "Well, since you're going to be so selfish, maybe we should put it to a vote." I blinked at her, dumbfounded. "A vote? You think you can vote to take over my land?" She lifted her chin with feigned defiance. "We live in a democracy, don't we?" I ran a hand over my face, sighing. "All right, Karen, if you want to treat this like some kind of democracy, let me introduce you to my security." I reached for my phone and made a quick call, my tone final. "It's time," I said. Hanging up, Karen raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Time for what?" But before she could finish, a deep, Rumbling growls sounded from behind the barn. Then they appeared. My real security detail. 6 massive dogs, each one trained, disciplined, and built like tanks, rounded the corner. Their sleek black coats gleamed in the sun, and their eyes, sharp and unblinking, locked onto the trespassers with an intensity that sent chills down spines. The crowd froze. Someone dropped a bag of marshmallows in fear. A woman whispered, stepping behind her husband. "Are they friendly?" I smirked. "Depends." Titan, the largest of the pack, a beast of a Belgian Malinois, stepped forward with a low, deep bark that sent a shock wave through the air. Karen's face drained of color. You can't just bring attack dogs into this." I folded my arms, unimpressed. "Oh, but you can bring 100 strangers onto my land." Titan took a slow, calculated step forward, his eyes never leaving Karen's. Another dog, Shadow, followed suit. Her ears perked, and she locked eyes with Karen, her body language clear. "You're the prey." Karen's face went pale as she stammered. You wouldn't." I gave her a casual shrug. "They're trained to defend, not attack, unless provoked," I said, watching her eyes widen with dawning realization. And just like that, the so-called community camping retreat descended into pure chaos. People scattered in every direction, shoving bags and camping gear into any available space, tripping over each other in their panic to leave. The man in cargo shorts abandoned his hammock entirely, while family of 4 sprinted to their minivan, shouting for the kids to hurry. Karen, now perched on the hood of a nearby SUV, screeched, "I'm calling the police." I chuckled, pulling out my phone. "Go ahead." I already did. Just as I said that, 2 squad cars rolled up, lights flashing. Karen gaped at me in disbelief as the officers stepped out of their vehicles. That's when it hit her. She had lost. Her face twisted in a mix of fury and panic as she watched the officers approach. The campers, who moments ago had been laughing and setting up their dream weekend, froze in place. The lively chatter had been replaced with a tense, uneasy silence. Karen tried to collect herself, gripping the clipboard so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and marched toward the officers, clearly thinking she was about to file some kind of formal complaint. "Thank goodness you're here, officers," she said, flipping through her papers. "This man has unleashed dangerous animals on innocent families. We were just trying to enjoy a peaceful community event, and now he's threatening us." She pointed at me, her voice trembling with feigned distress. "This is criminal behavior. He needs to be arrested immediately." One of the officers, a tall guy with a mustache that had probably seen more action than most war veterans, gave her an unimpressed look. Then, turning to me, he said, "Sir, you called about trespassers?" I nodded. "Yes, this is my land. I never gave anyone permission to be here. And now I have 100 people treating my property like it's a public park." I glanced at Karen. "As for the dogs, they're just here to make sure no one does anything stupid." The other officer, a sharp-eyed woman with a clipboard of her own, turned to Karen. "Ma'am, do you have written permission to be here?" Karen blinked, momentarily thrown off. "Well, I mean, the HOA agreed this space would be perfect for our retreat, just for the weekend." The officer's expression didn't budge. "That's not what I asked. Do you have written permission from the landowner?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She looked around, hoping someone would step in to back her up, but most of the campers were now too busy packing their things, too nervous to get involved. The officer sighed and turned back to me. "Do you have proof this is your property?" Instead of answering immediately, I walked over to my truck, opened a glove compartment, and pulled out a neatly organized folder. I handed it to the officer, who quickly flipped through it with professional efficiency. "Lands registered in your name," she muttered. "No HOA involvement. No shared community spaces." She snapped the folder shut and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you and everyone here are trespassing." Karen sputtered. "That can't be right. He's part of the neighborhood. That means the HOA has jurisdiction." The officer raised an eyebrow. "That's not how property laws work. The HOA governs only those who've agreed to its rules." This man is not one of those people, and this land is not HOA property. You have no authority here. Karen's face twisted, her expression one of a furious cartoon villain. But we planned this for months, she wailed, stomping her foot like a spoiled child having a tantrum. People took time off work. We printed schedules and everything. The officer's patience was thinning fast. Ma'am, that's not his problem. You can't just take over someone's land because it's convenient for you. Before Karen could respond, a low, guttural growl cut through the air. Titan had stepped forward, his massive frame casting a long shadow over the ground. His ears perked up, and his dark eyes locked on Karen with an intensity that practically dared her to keep talking. Karen let out a strangled yelp and scrambled backward, nearly tripping over her own feet. You need to get rid of those beasts, she shrieked. I smirked. They're on my land. Unlike you, they have permission to be here. The officer fought back a chuckle, but quickly regained his composure. All right, folks, he said, addressing the remaining campers. You've got 10 minutes to pack up and clear out. If you're still here after that, we'll start issuing citations for trespassing. A ripple of panic spread through campers. People started scrambling, grabbing their things in a frenzy, tripping over each other as they rushed to leave. A few muttered their frustrations about not even getting to roast marshmallows, but no one dared argue with the police. Karen, however, was far from ready to give up. She turned to me, her face flushed with rage. This isn't over. You're ruining a community event. You're making yourself a villain of your own neighborhood. I shrugged. I don't care about the neighborhood, Karen. I care about my land. And next time, if you or anyone else tries this again, my dogs won't just be standing around. Her face paled. You wouldn't dare, she stammered. I stepped a little closer, lowering my voice just enough for her to hear. Try me. She opened her mouth, then snapped it shut, her jaw tightening as she realized she'd lost. With one last furious glare, she stomped off toward her car, slamming the door so hard the whole SUV rattled. I watched the last few stragglers hurriedly pack their things, throwing anxious glances at the dogs, who remained calm and unyielding in formation. Titan let out one final bark, almost like a warning, and that was enough to send the remaining campers scrambling. The officer stood by, observing, until the last vehicle had finally driven off. Then the mustached officer tipped his hat. Looks like you handled that pretty well. I gave him a half smile. Thanks for backing me up. The female officer glanced at the dogs before turning her attention back to me. Got to say, that's an impressive security system. I chuckled. Better than any alarm. She nodded. Let us know if they try this again. Something tells me that woman isn't going to let it go. I sighed, already expecting more drama. I'll be ready. The officers got back in their cars and drove off, leaving me alone with my land once again. I took a deep breath, finally letting my tense shoulders relax. The quiet had returned, and with it, a deep sense of satisfaction. I turned to my dogs, who were now sitting alert, their eyes still scanning the area. Good job, guys. Titan wagged his tail, and Shadow gave me a quick nuzzle before trotting off to resume her patrol. I picked up my coffee, now cold, but I didn't care. I had won. My land was mine again, and Karen, well, she had just learned an important lesson about messing with the wrong neighbor. As I watched the last of the campers leave, leaving behind only a few trampled patches of grass and some forgotten bits of trash, I took a deep breath. The silence was finally back. My sanctuary was mine again, but just as I turned to head inside, I heard the unmistakable screech of tires on gravel. My jaw clenched. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Karen's SUV came to a screeching halt at the edge of my driveway, and she practically threw the door open as she stormed out, seething with rage. Her hands were trembling, not with fear, but with pure frustration. The moment our eyes locked, she jabbed a finger at me. "This isn't over," she snapped, marching toward me like she was about to demand some kind of apology. "You think you can just embarrass me like that? You think you can throw me off my own community's land?" I didn't move. I simply stared at her, my expression unreadable. She was waiting for a reaction, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. "This isn't your community's land, Karen," I said, my voice calm but firm. This is my property. You and your little HOA fantasy have no authority here. Her lip curled, frustration building. You don't belong here. You live among us, but you refuse to contribute. You refuse to follow the rules that keep this neighborhood together. I let out a dry chuckle. Your rules, the ones I never agreed to. You don't get to decide what I do with my land. Karen stomped her foot like a child throwing a tantrum. You humiliated me in front of everyone. They think I have no power now. Do you realize what you've done? I smirked. Yeah, I reminded them that you're not as important as you think you are. Her face turned crimson, and for a moment, I thought she was about to scream again. But instead, she took a deep breath and composed herself, which to me only meant one thing. She was plotting something. I hope you're prepared for the consequences, she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. I have friends who are well connected. You may have gotten the police on your side this time, but let's see what happens when the county gets involved. You'll regret this. I crossed my arms. I doubt it. With one last furious glare, Karen spun on her heels and stormed back to her SUV. She slammed the door so hard it echoed in the still air, then backed up quickly, kicking up a cloud of dust as she sped off down the road, leaving a trail of gravel in her wake. I shook my head, watching her go. If she wanted to play dirty, I was more than ready. Over the next few days, I kept a close eye on my property. I had security cameras installed all over, motion sensors near the fence line, and of course, I had my dogs watching, always ready. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done. She had the kind of relentless energy that refused to quit, even when she knew she was in the wrong. Every time I stepped out into my yard, my dogs seemed to be on high alert, their ears flicking, watching every car that passed. Even Titan, normally so calm, had his hackles raised like he was waiting for something to happen. I wasn't sure if it was my gut telling me something, or if it was a fact that Karen had made a huge mistake in underestimating me. But I started taking precautions. I double-checked my security cameras, made sure my motion sensors were in full working order, and kept the dogs close. I was ready for whatever was coming next. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch sipping coffee, I heard the unmistakable hum of an engine coming down my street. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized Karen's SUV, but this time, something felt different. She was alone, and her car came to a slow, deliberate stop at the edge of my driveway. I stood up, prepared for whatever stunt she was about to pull. She got out of the car, this time not with a typical rush of anger, but with a cool, calculated air. Her clothes were different. A sharp black blazer, a pair of heels clicking against the pavement, and a look on her face like she had a plan. She walked up to me slowly, every step measured, and stopped just short of the front gate. "Nice setup you've got here," she said, her tone almost friendly. I crossed my arms. Not buying it. "What do you want, Karen?" She gave me a tight smile. "I'm not here to cause trouble. Actually, I'm here to make you an offer." I raised an eyebrow. "An offer?" She nodded, clearly pleased with herself. "You made it clear that you're not playing by the rules, but we both know this isn't over. The HOA might not have any power over your land right now, but that can change. I've got friends in high places, and trust me, they'll be more than willing to help me clean up this mess you've made." I stood my ground. "You think I'm intimidated by your friends? You've already tried using the law to bully me, Karen. That ship has sailed." She waved off my words like they were nothing. "Not the law, not this time. I'm offering you a chance to work with me. I've got connections that can help you, let's say, reintegrate into the community. You'll get access to resources, assistance with your property, and maybe even some extra cash for that fancy garden you've been working on." I couldn't help but scoff. "So, you're trying to bribe me?" Her smile tightened, but she didn't back down. "Bribe? No. This is a partnership. A way for you to get back in the good graces of the people who matter. Think about it. You don't have to be the outcast forever." I shook my head. "I'm not interested in your deal, Karen. I don't need your help, and I sure as hell don't need to play by your twisted rules." For a moment, her eyes narrowed, a flash of frustration crossing her face. But then, as if realizing she wasn't going to get anywhere with me, She straightened up. Well, you won't get rid of me that easily. I hope you've enjoyed your little victory, because it won't last long. Before I could respond, she turned on her heel and stormed back to her car, the sound of her heels echoing in the stillness. As she sped away, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I wasn't about to let her push me around anymore. I had the upper hand now, and I wasn't going to let her or anyone else take it from me. The next few weeks were quieter than I expected. There were no more surprise visits from Karen, and no more disturbances on my property. I kept my routine, spent time with my dogs, and continued working on my land. But I could sense that Karen wasn't finished. She was biding her time, waiting for the right moment to strike again. I knew that if she ever came back, I'd be ready. I wasn't afraid of her threats or her schemes. I had already proven I could handle anything she threw at me, and if she wanted a war, I'd make sure it was one she'd never forget. The battle for my land wasn't over, but I had no intention of letting her win. I wasn't about to let Karen pull any fast ones on me. Sure enough, it didn't take long before I found out exactly what she was up to. One morning, a letter arrived, official county seal, and all. I opened it with a frown, scanning the text. Karen had filed a complaint against me, claiming my land was being used improperly. The complaint included accusations of environmental hazards and public safety concerns. In short, she had gone ahead with her absurd threat. I couldn't help but laugh. Did she really think this would intimidate me? I quickly made a few calls, got everything in order, and set up a meeting at the county office. When I arrived, dressed casually in my usual jeans and a worn-out flannel, I could see Karen sitting smugly in the waiting area, dressed in what looked like her victorious outfit. She flashed me a grin as if she already had the upper hand. I slid into my seat, stretching out, fully relaxed. If she thought she was winning, she was about to get a rude awakening. The clerk called us in, and we were led into a small office where a middle-aged county official sat behind a desk cluttered with papers. He adjusted his glasses, glancing at the complaint. "All right," he said, looking back and forth between us. "We have a report here claiming that your property is being used as an unsanctioned event space. It says there are hazardous materials on site and that your animals pose a threat to public safety. Is this true?" Before I could respond, Karen jumped in. "Yes. He's got aggressive attack dogs, and his property is a safety hazard. People can't just be wandering around there." The official turned to me. "Sir, do you have anything to say about this?" I pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the desk, watching Karen's smirk start to fade. "I have evidence that Karen and over 100 people trespass on my property. I also have security footage showing that my dogs were properly trained and had no involvement in any attacks. They were simply doing their job of protecting the land." The official started flipping through my documents, while Karen's face went from confident to nervous. "I also have the police report from that day," I continued, confirming that Karen organized an unauthorized event and had no legal permission to be there. Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The official rubbed his temples, clearly tired of the charade. "Ma'am, you do understand that this complaint holds no legal weight, right? This is private land, and the HOA has no authority over it. There's no violation here." Karen's face turned a deep shade of red, her frustration building. But he's part of the neighborhood," she sputtered. "That means the HOA can step in." The official raised an eyebrow. "That's not how property law works. The HOA can only govern those who are members and have agreed to their rules. This man is not one of those members, and this land is not part of HOA jurisdiction. You have no authority here." Karen's jaw clenched so hard I thought it might break. "You can't just get away with this," she seethed. I shrugged, unimpressed. "Looks like I just did." The official gave her a stern look. "Ma'am, I advise you not to file any more frivolous complaints. Otherwise, you might find yourself in legal trouble." Karen's whole body stiffened, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the arms of her chair. She glared at me, but she knew the fight was over. With a huff, she stood up, marched out of the office, and slammed the door behind her. I didn't bother watching her leave. Instead, I stepped into the fresh air with a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief. This was finally over. Karen had thrown everything she could at me, manipulation, lies, even empty legal threats, and failed each time. Later that evening, as I relaxed on my porch, Titan resting his head on my lap and the rest of the dogs sprawled out on the lawn, I felt a quiet sense of victory. The day was mine, my land was mine, and Karen, well, she had learned an unforgettable lesson about messing with the wrong neighbor. Thank you for watching Untold Realites. Don't forget to subscribe for more. Thumbs up and comments below.